You ever notice how some mornings feel too calm, like the world is trying to warn you without using words? That's how the day began for Jordan Miles, a 17-year-old kid with a quiet smile, a soft voice, and a dog who understood him better than most people ever tried to. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, just a soft amber glow pushing back the night, the kind of dawn that older folks say feels like a blessing. Jordan believed that, most mornings anyway. His German shepherd, Shadow, trotted beside him through the neighborhood park, tail swaying, nose searching the cool air like he was reading a long, invisible story only dogs could see. Shadow was big but calm, disciplined but gentle. The kind of dog who'd lean into you if he sensed you were sad, who'd sit straight-backed and proud when you praised him. Jordan's father, Agent Leonard Miles of the FBI, had raised the dog himself before giving him to his son. Not protection, Leonard had said once, companionship, loyalty, the kind you earn. Jordan remembered that line every time Shadow pressed his head against his leg, like now. The park was mostly empty, except for the occasional jogger and a couple of older men who set up a chessboard on a concrete table every morning, whether it was raining, snowing, or burning hot. The city belonged to them at sunrise. In truth, it belonged to Jordan and Shadow too, at least for that small window each day, before life reminded everyone how they were supposed to behave. Jordan put his earbuds in but didn't play anything. He just liked the feeling of them, the quiet it gave him. He breathed in the soft wind. Shadow's collar jingled gently. "Good boy," Jordan whispered, rubbing behind Shadow's ear. Shadow leaned into the hand with satisfied weight. It should have been an ordinary morning. But trouble doesn't always start loud. Sometimes it approaches slowly, like a shadow stretching across a peaceful room. Sometimes you don't realize the moment your day changes until long after it's already begun. On the far end of the park, a police cruiser rolled into the lot, unnecessarily fast, tires crunching against gravel loud enough to break the dawn's stillness. Jordan's eyes flicked toward it only for a moment. He'd seen patrol cars here before, never bothered him. He never given anybody trouble, and Shadow stayed close enough that people usually smiled or offered a morning. But the car didn't park in the designated spots. Instead, it rolled further in, toward the walking path. Toward them. Shadow picked up his head, ears standing alert, not aggressive, just aware. "Easy," Jordan murmured. The cruiser stopped crooked, angled like whoever drove it didn't care much about lines or rules. A door slammed. Jordan didn't recognize the officer at first glance, but the type, oh, he knew that type. Early 50s maybe, barrel chest, heavy boots, that walk, the kind that tries to announce authority before a word is spoken. Officer Reynolds. Jordan didn't know his name yet, but he'd learn it soon enough. The officer's eyes locked on Shadow immediately, narrowing in a way Jordan didn't like. Shadow stayed by Jordan's side, tail slowing but not stiffening. "Morning," Jordan said, polite, neutral, unbothered. The officer didn't respond. Instead, he planted a hand on his belt, thumb brushing the holster with a casualness that didn't feel casual at all. He scanned Jordan the way some people inspect produce they're not planning to buy, checking for something wrong, something inferior. "Is that dog supposed to be off-leash?" the officer asked. His tone wasn't curious, it was accusatory wrapped in false concern. Jordan lifted the leash in his hand. "He's not off," he said calmly. "I've got him." Reynolds took a few steps closer. Shadow didn't move except to lean slightly closer to Jordan, reading the tension like a book. "You training him for something?" the officer asked. "No, sir," Jordan replied. "Just walking him before school." "What kind of dog is it?" "German Shepherd." "Figures." He said it the way someone would say, "That explains the trouble." Jordan exhaled slowly, that kind of breath you take when you've been here before, when you've learned to swallow irritation, because some people want nothing more than to see you lose control. Shadow let out a soft whine, sensing Jordan's shift. "He friendly?" the officer asked, but it wasn't really a question. It was a setup. Yes. Uh-huh. Reynolds circled them like he was inspecting the scene of a crime. A couple of joggers slowed, sensing something off. The chess players paused mid-move. Jordan scratched Shadow's head again, whispering, "It's fine, boy, we're fine." But they were not really. Some officers know how to de-escalate. Others know how to start a fire without striking a match. Reynolds stepped too close, hands still near his weapon. Shadow reacted the way any trained German shepherd would, not attacking, not lunging, just stepping forward with a protective stance. A natural defense, the kind of posture that says, "I see you, don't push it." Reynolds immediately jerked back, hand gripping the weapon fully now. "Control your dog," the officer barked. "I am controlling him," Jordan said, heart thumping. "He just stepped. You need to back that animal up right now." Shadow wasn't growling, wasn't baring his teeth. He was doing the same thing any loyal dog would do when a stranger approached their person aggressively. Jordan held the leash tight, gently guiding Shadow behind him. The dog obeyed instantly. "See," Jordan said softly, "he's good, no threat." But the officer's breathing had already changed, shallow, erratic, the kind that comes from fear or from wanting an excuse. His hand tightened on the gun. Jordan's pulse spiked, not panic, calculation. He'd been taught by his father how to read people, read situations, read danger. The man's posture wasn't fear, it was ego mixed with assumption. "Sir, please don't," Jordan began. Reynolds suddenly stepped back and shouted, "Dog's aggressive." Shadow's ears shot forward. Jordan took a step to shield him. "He's not," he insisted. But once an officer chooses a narrative, reality has a way of bending under the weight of the badge. Reynolds drew his weapon. Time seemed to slow, a terrible, crushing slow. Jordan heard nothing except his own heartbeat slamming in his chest. "No, don't," Jordan shouted. Shadow didn't lunge, didn't bark. He simply looked up at Jordan, confused, trusting. The trust hurt the most. Before Jordan could blink, before the joggers could scream, before the sun could finish rising, a single gunshot cracked through the morning. Shadow dropped instantly. Jordan's scream tore out of him, raw, instinctive, primal, the kind of sound you don't forget, the kind that comes from watching something innocent fall for no reason at all. Shadow's body hit the ground with a heavy thump, legs twitching. Jordan fell to his knees so hard he scraped them on the concrete, grabbing the dog's fur, pulling him close, his hands shaking violently. "No, no, no, Shadow, buddy, hey, stay with me, please." The joggers froze. The chess game stopped. The world held its breath. Reynolds kept the gun out, shouting commands Jordan couldn't hear over his own heartbeat. But Jordan wasn't thinking about himself. Only his dog. His best friend. His Shadow. Shadow's breathing came shallow, labored, fadding. Jordan pressed his forehead to the dog's, whispering, I got you, I swear I got you." And in that moment, that terrible, trembling moment, he knew something he wished he didn't. The world didn't see Shadow as a loyal dog. And it didn't see him as a kid worth protecting. The quiet morning was gone. Peace was gone. Reason was gone. All that remained was a bleeding dog, a trembling teenager, and a police officer who didn't know the biggest truth of all. Jordan Miles wasn't alone. Not today. Not ever. His father was coming. And the world was about to change. For a moment, Jordan couldn't hear anything but the ragged breaths slipping in and out of Shadow's trembling chest. The world had gone dim at the edges, like someone had turned down the brightness on reality. His hands were wet with the dog's blood, warm and sticky, clinging to his fingers as if begging him to hold on tighter. People finally started moving, slowly, cautiously, drawn by shock and disbelief more than bravery. One of the joggers, a woman in her 30s with a neon sweatband across her forehead covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He didn't do anything, I saw the whole thing." But whispers didn't stop the bleeding. Whispers didn't bring breath back into Shadow's weakening body. Jordan's chest tightened until he felt like he couldn't breathe either. "Shadow, buddy, look at me," his voice broke, words crumbling as soon as they left his lips. "Stay, just stay." A soft whimper escaped Shadow's throat. His eyes, always alert, always warm, flickered with pain and confusion, searching Jordan's face as if asking what he did wrong. Jordan's tears dropped onto the dog's fur. "You didn't do nothing, you hear me? Not a damn thing." Behind them, Officer Reynolds barked orders loud enough for the whole block to hear, not because they were necessary, but because loudness hid uncertainty. "Back away from the animal, step away, hands where I can see them." Jordan didn't move. He didn't even flinch. Reynolds took a few steps closer, gun still drawn. His voice cracked with that shaky bravado some folks use when the truth of what they did starts to creep up behind them. "I said step away. The dog tried to attack me." Someone in the crowd snapped back. "No, he did. You walked up on them. That boy wasn't doing anything." Reynolds ignored it, or pretended to, but his jaw tightened. His eyes flicked across the forming crowd, realizing far too late that the narrative he thought he controlled was slipping out of his hands. Phones were out now. Recording. Zooming in. Catching every second. Jordan finally looked up from Shadow. His eyes were red, glassy, but steady in a way that made the air around him feel different. "Why'd you shoot him?" he asked quietly. Reynolds froze. The question had no aggression, just devastation. And devastation demands honesty in a way anger never does. He charged," Reynolds stuttered. "He didn't," Jordan replied, not shouting, not trembling, just saying the truth with a clarity that cut sharper than any blade. Reynolds searched for a retort, something to blame, to twist, but before he could speak, Shadow let out another strained breath, weaker than the last. Jordan's heart cracked. He leaned in close, bringing his forehead gently against the side of Shadow's head. "Stay with me, boy, just a little longer. Dad's gonna know what to do, okay? He always knows." One of the chess players, an older black man with silver hair and a weathered face, stepped forward. "Let the boy hold his dog," he said firmly to Reynolds. "Ain't no threat here." Reynolds pointed at him. "Sir, step back or..." "Or what?" the man shot back. "You gonna shoot me too?" Murmurs spread through the onlookers. Disdain. Disbelief. Anger simmering, low and tense. Reynolds sensed control slipping and tried to raise his voice again. "Everyone back up. This is an active situation." "And you created it," someone yelled from the back. Jordan didn't lift his head from Shadow. Didn't care about the officer's orders. Didn't care about the crowd shouting. Didn't care about anything except the fadding rhythm under his hands, Shadow's heartbeat slowing like the last few thumps of a drum losing strength. He took a shaking breath and whispered, "I'm right here, I'm not leaving you." A woman knelt beside him, the jogger from earlier, her voice gentle. "I called Animal Emergency Services," she said softly. "They're rushing over, just keep him talking, keep him calm." Jordan nodded without looking up. Reynolds heard her and snapped, "Ma'am, you need to back away from the suspect." Jordan's head jerked up in disbelief. Suspect. Reynolds winced. He hadn't meant to say that out loud, but ego and panic make bad partners, and the word slipped through the cracks. "He attacked me," Reynolds insisted weakly. "I feared for my life." Another man in the crowd shouted, "Nobody believes that. We watched the whole thing." The air grew thick, not just with tension, but with something deeper. That collective awareness people get when they realize they've witnessed an injustice happening in real time, and silence would make them complicit. Jordan's hands shook, but his voice didn't. "Call my dad," he whispered. The jogger blinked. "Sweetheart, you want me to?" Jordan shook his head and pointed at his own phone, lying a few feet away in the grass where he'd dropped it when Shadow fell. He didn't want anyone else to speak for him. He just needed someone to hand him the phone. The older chess player, the one who'd challenged Reynolds, walked over slowly, hands visible, and picked up the phone. He handed it to Jordan with a steady nod. "You take your time, son." Reynolds sputtered, "Sir, don't pick up evidence. That's obstruction." The older man stared him down. "Obstruction is what you did this morning." The crowd hummed with agreement. Jordan unlocked the phone with trembling fingers. The screen was smeared with Shadow's blood. He didn't wipe it off. He didn't need the screen to be clean. He just needed his father to answer. He hit the single contact, labeled Dad. It rang once, twice, 3 times. And then, "Jordan." His father's voice, deep, calm, steady like bedrock. The sound alone made Jordan's shoulders finally drop. His breath cracked into a sob he'd been holding back since the gun fired. "Dad," he whispered, "he shot Shadow." Silence. Not empty silence, heavy silence. The kind that says a storm is forming far away, and when it arrives, the world will not be the same. "Where are you?" his father asked. "Park on Roosevelt, near the north side." "Is the officer still there?" Jordan looked up. Reynolds was packing, sweating now, gripping the gun too tight, darting glances at the cameras recording him. "Yes," Jordan whispered. Another beat of silence. Then his father's voice lowered, still calm, but edged with something cold and unmistakable. "Stay with Shadow, do not move him, I'm on my way." Jordan closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. "Dad, please hurry." "I'm coming," his father said, and there was no doubt in the words, no question, no hesitation. Just certainty. Just truth. Jordan hung up and rested his forehead against Shadow's again. "Dad's coming, boy, just hold on for me, please." The crowd could feel it, the shift in energy, the tightening air, the sense that something bigger than all of them was now racing toward the park. Reynolds, overhearing enough to know the father was on his way, stiffened. "You can't call anyone," he snapped. "You're detained until backup arrives." Jordan finally looked him full in the face. And for the first time since the gunshot, his voice carried weight. "You don't know who my father is." Reynolds opened his mouth to respond, but a siren wailed in the distance, not frantic, not chaotic, but purposeful. "Coming closer. Vast. Sure." Shadow's heartbeat fluttered weakly under Jordan's hand. "Hang on, buddy, hang on." People stepped aside as though the world itself was making space. Because something was coming. Someone. Someone who didn't raise his voice to get respect. Someone who didn't need to threaten to gain control. Someone with a badge Reynolds didn't outrank. Didn't understand. Didn't expect. Someone who would arrive not with fury, but with truth. The kind that changes everything. And Jordan knew. The moment his father stepped into this park, the story Officer Reynolds tried to create would fall apart piece by piece, lie by lie. The air trembled with anticipation. The siren grew louder. And Shadow took another shallow breath as Jordan held him tight and whispered, "Dad's almost here, just hold on." The world was about to shift. There are moments in life when the world gets quiet in the wrong way, not peaceful, not comforting, but tense, like the air itself is bracing for truth to walk in wearing heavy shoes. That's what settled over Roosevelt Park as the siren grew louder. It wasn't the frantic spin of ambulance lights or the crashing rush of patrol cars. This was a single, clean siren, one that rose with restraint, like whoever was driving didn't need noise to command space. Officer Reynolds noticed it first. His head snapped toward the sound, his entire posture tightening. Something about that siren, its steadiness, its confidence, hit him in a way the crowd's anger hadn't. Jordan kept his eyes on Shadow, but he heard it too, and the sound pulled something deep inside him, a thread of hope wrapped in dread, because he knew what his father's calm meant. When Agent Leonard Miles was calm, someone else was about to learn they made a mistake. A very large one. The crowd grew silent as the siren cut abruptly, smoothly, like someone flicked a switch. A dark SUV rolled into the park entrance, not the local police design, not the city patrol colors. This was federal, clean, unmistakable. No one had to see the emblem to feel it. Reynolds cursed under his breath. The SUV stopped 30 feet away. The door opened with a soft, measured click. And Agent Leonard Miles stepped out. He wasn't tall in a way that dominated. He wasn't loud in a way that threatened. He carried himself with controlled gravity, the kind of presence that settles a room before he even speaks. Dark suit, crisp but not flashy, shoulders squared, eyes sharp, scanning everything in one sweeping pass like he was reading the truth written on people's faces. He didn't run toward Jordan. He didn't shout. He didn't break. He simply walked steady, measured steps across the grass, and the crowd parted without being asked. People didn't move because they feared him. They moved because something about him demanded respect the way the ocean demands depth. Jordan looked up as his father approached, and in that moment, their eyes met, one filled with heartbreak, the other with a calm so controlled it was almost frightening. Leonard crouched beside his son and the dying dog without speaking to anyone else first. His voice lowered to a whisper only Jordan could hear. "Let me see him." Jordan slid his hands away, though they shook violently. Leonard placed one palm gently on Shadow's side, feeling the faint rise and fall, the strain of each breath. His jaw tightened the slightest bit, the only tell that emotion lived beneath the surface. When he looked at his son again, his voice softened. "You did everything right." Jordan swallowed hard, tears continuing to fall. "Dad, he just shot him. Shadow didn't do anything. He was just being Shadow." "I know," Leonard said. "He didn't question him. Didn't ask for clarification. Didn't doubt a single word. Because Leonard Miles knew his son. And he trusted the truth more than the noise around it. Only after checking Shadow's pulse, only after grounding his son, did he stand. Then he finally turned toward Officer Reynolds. The silent strength in that moment could have cracked glass. Reynolds tried to hide behind false authority, puffing up his chest. "Sir, this is an active police." Leonard raised a hand slightly, not enough to interrupt with force, but enough to stop the man mid-sentence. Not a word spoken. Just quiet, controlled presence. Reynolds' mouth closed without him meaning it to. Leonard's voice, when he finally did speak, was calm enough to chill the air. "State your name." Reynolds blinked. "I, Officer Mark Reynolds, badge number." Leonard cut in, not with aggression, but with certainty. "You discharged your weapon." Reynolds stiffened. The animal was aggressive. Leonard's eyes didn't blink, was it? The way he said it wasn't a question. It was an unmasking. Phone stayed raised. The crowd watched without breathing. Jordan, still kneeling beside Shadow, listened as if every word mattered, because it did. Reynolds straightened, trying to reclaim ground. "Sir," the dog advanced toward me and the boy. "My son," Leonard corrected. "Use his name." Reynolds' throat bobbed. Your son failed to restrain the animal. I feared for my safety." The crowd murmured, disbelief, anger, witnesses shaking their heads. Leonard didn't raise his voice. Didn't step forward aggressively. Didn't even let his breathing change. That was what made the moment heavy. "I'm going to say this once," Leonard said quietly. "If you lie in front of these witnesses, in front of these cameras, You won't only lose your badge, you'll lose your freedom. Reynolds blinked rapidly, panic flickering. Leonard continued with the same steady tone. Now, before we go any further, you're going to answer one question. The park went so silent, even the leaves seemed to still. Leonard's eyes sharpened. When you fired your weapon, were you in immediate danger? Reynolds opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again, voice catching. I followed protocol. No, Leonard said softly, you followed your fear. The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Leonard didn't look at them, he never broke focus. Reynolds wiped sweat from his forehead. Sir, with all due respect. Respect, Leonard repeated, voice low. You don't get to use that word today. Something in Reynolds' posture crumbled. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sharp, weighted, suffocating, the kind of silence that forces truth upward like a held breath. Jordan looked at his father with awe, not because he was intimidating, but because he managed to speak whole truths without raising his voice. That was his father's strength. Not volume. Not force. Clarity. Leonard finally broke eye contact and signaled subtly with 2 fingers to the SUV. Another door opened, and a federal medical agent stepped out carrying a trauma kit designed for K-9 units. Reynolds stuttered, "WH, where are you taking that dog? Evidence tampering." Leonard turned his head. Just his head. And every word that followed came out calm, steady, almost gentle. You tampered with that evidence when you put a bullet in it. Reynolds' face drained of color. A low ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Leonard motioned for the medic to assist Jordan. Stabilize him, now. The medic knelt without hesitation, beginning to work on Shadow, applying pressure, checking vitals, preparing a stretcher. Reynolds shouted weakly, "You don't have authority here." Leonard finally stepped toward him, slowly, deliberately, each step steady as a heartbeat. When he stopped in front of Reynolds, he spoke so quietly the officer had to lean in to hear him. "You're mistaken." He reached into his jacket pocket. Reynolds flinched, old habits. But Leonard didn't remove a weapon. He removed a badge. A badge that meant jurisdiction, didn't bend to local insecurity. A badge that outranked excuses and ego. A badge Reynolds had never expected to see. Leonard held it up with 2 fingers, not boastfully, not triumphantly, just truthfully. "I am the authority here." And the park fell into a silence, so heavy it felt like the moment truth finally took its seat at the table. For a long moment, no one moved. The badge in Leonard Miles' hand gleamed in the thin morning light, not with showmanship, not with ego, but with the gravity of truth, the kind that doesn't need volume to be heard. Reynolds stared at it, throat tight, Adam's apple twitching in a nervous rise and fall. The letters on the seal were impossible to misunderstand: federal, high clearance, irrefutable. The officer's voice, when he finally managed to force it out, cracked with strain. I didn't know." Leonard didn't soften, he didn't harden either. He simply stood there, hands steady, eyes steady, breathing steady. The kind of steadiness that shakes unstable men more than shouting ever could. "Not knowing," Leonard said quietly, "didn't stop you from pulling the trigger." Phones continued recording. Some people cried quietly, others whispered prayers, and others, particularly the witnesses who'd seen the entire incident, watched with the stillness of people realizing they were standing inside a moment that could change a life. Jordan, still beside Shadow, listened. Every word mattered. Reynolds' voice shrank further. "Sir, I felt threatened, the dog, the boy, they." Leonard raised a single hand. It wasn't abrupt. It wasn't hostile. But it silenced the entire park. "Stop." One word, firm, controlled. Reynolds' mouth snapped shut. Leonard stepped closer, not invading the officer's space, just approaching with the kind of calm precision that made every inch count. He spoke softly, almost gently, but the words carried like a stone dropped into a still pond. "When you carry a weapon," he said, "fear can't be your guide." Reynolds swallowed. Leonard continued, voice steady as iron. "And when you hold a badge, assumptions can't be your shield." The officer's eyes flickered with something like guilt, or perhaps the beginning of realizing guilt had arrived. Behind them, the federal medic was working fast. Shadow's breathing was shallow but present. Jordan kept whispering to him, hand resting lightly on the dog's neck, feeling each faint, struggling rise like it was the last candle in a dark room. Leonard finally shifted his gaze toward his son, Jordan. Jordan looked up, eyes swollen from crying. His father's face softened by a fraction, so slight most wouldn't notice, but Jordan did. "Stay with him," Leonard murmured. "He's holding on." Jordan nodded, wiping his cheek with the back of his hand. Leonard turned back to Reynolds. "Holster your weapon," he instructed. "What?" "Holster your weapon." Reynolds hesitated, glancing uneasily at the cameras, but Leonard didn't repeat himself. He simply waited, and somehow that was louder than any command. Slowly, reluctantly, the officer slid the gun back into its holster. Leonard continued, "Step away from my son." Reynolds took a step back, then another. The crowd shifted, little movements, but all in the same direction, like a tide turning. Witnesses who'd been afraid to speak earlier found their courage in the calm certainty radiating from Leonard Miles. The older chess player stepped forward. "Agent Miles, if you need statements, I saw everything." Leonard nodded once, respectfully. "I'll take every witness, thank you." The man looked at Reynolds with a cold, tired disappointment. "Men like you make mornings like this happen." A soft wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Reynolds bristled, but Leonard didn't let him respond. Instead, he asked a single question. A simple question. A devastating question. "Officer Reynolds," Leonard said quietly, "why did you approach them in the first place?" Reynolds stiffened. I was conducting routine patrol." The dog looked aggressive. "From how far away?" Reynolds didn't answer. Leonard's head tilted slightly. "Let me phrase it another way. Did the dog approach you first, or did you approach them?" Silence. Phones continued recording. Reynolds' jaw worked, but no sound came out. Leonard nodded slowly, as though the man's silence was the confession he'd expected. "Understood." Reynolds' voice cracked. I didn't mean." "You didn't think," Leonard corrected gently. "That's different." The officer lowered his eyes, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The medic called out then, voice firm, "Agent Miles, I have a pulse, but it's weak. We need transport immediately." Leonard knelt again beside Jordan. "They're taking him to the federal K-9 trauma unit. It's the best facility available." Jordan's breath hitched. "He'll make it." Leonard held his son's face gently between both hands. "Shadow is fighting. That's what matters right now, and we're not giving up on him." Jordan nodded, tears welling again. The medic signaled two others who stepped out from the SUV with a reinforced stretcher, the kind designed for tactical dogs. They lifted Shadow carefully, every movement controlled. Jordan kept a hand on the stretcher as they raised it. Shadow whimpered faintly, but didn't resist. "It's okay," Jordan whispered. "We're here, we're right here." Leonard rose slowly, turning back to Reynolds with a kind of quiet finality. "This isn't over," he said, "not a threat, not a promise, just truth." Reynolds opened his mouth as if to protest, but Leonard's gaze stopped him cold. "You fired on a family companion without cause," Leonard said. "You escalated a peaceful situation. You drew your weapon on a minor. You lost control of your judgment." Reynolds whispered, "I'm sorry." "Tell that to the dog," Leonard said softly. "Tell that to my son." The silence after that felt like an indictment. Two patrol cars finally screeched into the lot, prompted by Reynolds' earlier call for backup. Younger officers stepped out, confused by the sight. A crowd, a bleeding dog being loaded, cameras everywhere, and a federal agent standing firm in the center of it all. Leonard turned to them, his voice cool. "Officers, please escort Officer Reynolds to the side until Internal Affairs arrives. Preserve the scene, and do not allow him to leave." Reynolds sputtered, "Wait, what? You can't." The younger officers hesitated, then saw the badge in Leonard's hand. Their hesitation dissolved instantly. "Yes, sir," one replied, placing a light guiding hand on Reynolds' arm, not arresting, just containing, watching. Reynolds looked around, suddenly aware he had no allies here, no backup for the version of events he'd tried to frame. The crowd watched with a mix of relief and righteous anger. Jordan stayed beside the stretcher until the medic gently nudged him toward his father. "He'll be okay. We'll update you as soon as we can." Leonard placed a steady hand on Jordan's back, grounding him. The SUV doors closed around Shadow. The engine turned. The vehicle pulled away quickly but smoothly. Jordan stared after it, throat trembling. "Dad," he whispered. Leonard pulled him close, letting Jordan bury his face into his chest. Blood and tears mixing on the fabric of his suit. "It's okay," his father murmured. "You did everything right. You stayed calm. You stayed with him." Jordan choked out, "He didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Leonard whispered, "and the truth will show that, I promise." People around them lowered their phones, some wiping tears, others shaking their heads at the injustice they'd witnessed. One thing was clear. The silence in the park was no longer fear. It was respect. The kind earned not through force, but through presence, through integrity, through truth spoken softly. The kind that makes even the guilty stand still. Leonard held his son tighter as the morning sun finally broke fully through the clouds, casting long shadows over the place where Shadow had fallen. Those shadows would linger. But so would the truth. Sometimes truth doesn't roar. Sometimes it doesn't even speak. Sometimes it just walks into a room with its head held high, and every lie folds in on itself like paper in a fire. That was the energy following Agent Leonard Miles as he guided Jordan toward the federal SUV. Another medic had arrived with a kit to clean Jordan's hands, though nothing could wash away the feeling of Shadow's warm blood slipping through his fingers. Jordan leaned heavily against his father, exhausted, heartbroken, but there was something else rising beneath the grief, a slow, simmering awareness that the world was finally shifting back toward balance. Because silence had done its job. And now truth was stepping forward. Leonard opened the back door of the SUV for Jordan. "Sit, breathe, don't focus on what you can't control right now." Jordan nodded weakly and slid into the seat. His hands were trembling again. "Dad, you'll get justice for him, right?" Leonard looked at him with a gaze that held both strength and sorrow. "Justice isn't something you grab, it's something you make undeniable." He closed the door gently, then turned to the gathering officers and detectives. And that's when the atmosphere shifted entirely. Because the local precinct hadn't expected him. The young officers from earlier stood stiffly to the side, unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. Few had been taught how to handle the arrival of someone whose badge carried more weight than their entire precinct. Reynolds stood behind them, hands trembling slightly, whether from fear, shock, or fading adrenaline wasn't clear, but the look in his eyes. That was unmistakable. He knew things had slipped far beyond his control. An unmarked black sedan pulled into the lot, skidding slightly before stopping. Two Internal Affairs officers stepped out, one tall and stern-looking, the other younger, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and a professionalism that suggested he took his job more seriously than most. The taller IA officer strode quickly toward Leonard, offering a firm nod of respect. Agent Miles, he said, we were told you needed support. Leonard returned the nod. I need a full reconstruction of what happened here. Every phone video, every witness statement. Lock down the area. Don't let Reynolds out of sight. Reynolds swallowed hard. Agent Miles, sir, with all respect. Leonard turned his head slowly. You keep using that word. Perhaps today you'll learn what it actually means. The IA officer motioned for Reynolds to step aside for questioning. The officer hesitated, but only for a moment. The surrounding witnesses, the cameras, the federal presence, there was nowhere for him to hide. The younger IA agent with the glasses approached Leonard. Sir, permission to gather digital evidence from the scene. Take everything, Leonard replied. Store it under federal review. The agent nodded and moved toward the crowd. Phones were offered willingly. People wanted the truth out, wanted the world to see what they had seen. The older chess player walked straight up to the IA agent. You want to know what happened? He asked. Everything started when that officer decided he needed to feel taller that morning. The IA agent listened attentively as the man recounted the timeline. While the investigation began to take shape, Leonard approached the local officers, still standing awkwardly near Reynolds. Which of you is senior on scene? A woman in her 40s raised her hand, nervous but composed. I am, sir, Sergeant Torres. Leonard nodded. Sergeant, I need a complete log of dispatch calls involving this officer within the last 12 hours. Torres blinked. Of course, I'll pull the data immediately. And Sergeant, Leonard added, lowering his voice, keep copies, do not allow anything to be overwritten. Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded with understanding. Yes, sir. As Torres moved away, Leonard finally allowed himself a breath, not relief, not victory, but focus. Then he turned back toward the SUV, where Jordan sat watching everything unfold through the cracked window. Jordan wiped his eyes when he saw his father coming, straightening as best he could. Leonard opened the door. How's Shadow? The medic, still kneeling beside the stretcher rails inside, called out from behind. He's stable enough for transport. We are taking him in now. Jordan exhaled shakily. Please, don't let them lose him. We're not losing anyone today, Leonard said gently. Jordan nodded once, pressing his sleeve to his eyes. Dad, can I see the footage? People said they recorded everything. You will, Leonard said, after we review it properly, not here. Jordan swallowed hard. He didn't do anything wrong. Leonard reached out, placing his hand lightly on Jordan's shoulder. Truth always surfaces. Sometimes it just takes longer than we want. There was a pause, then Jordan whispered. Why'd he shoot him, Dad? Shadow didn't growl, didn't bark. He was just protecting me. Leonard took a deep breath, the kind that tries to stay calm even when anger claws at the edges. Some people see threat instead of life, he said softly. Some see danger where there is none, and some carry fear like a weapon. Jordan looked down at his blood-stained hands. I tried to pull him back. I swear I did. Leonard knelt, so he was eye to eye with his son. I know, and everyone here saw it. This isn't about you failing your dog. This is about a man who failed his badge. Jordan's lip trembled again. His father steadied him with a firm squeeze of the shoulder. You did everything right. Don't ever question that. Jordan nodded, barely holding himself together. Behind them, the medic shut the rear SUV door completely, ready for transport. Another federal vehicle rolled into position behind them, ready to escort. Leonard stood and signaled to the IA agents. Gather all witness uploads to the secure channel, forward copies to my office. The younger IA agent called back. Already done, sir. Reynolds watched this entire operation unfold with growing panic. He finally stepped forward. Voice cracking. This isn't fair. He made the dog go at me. Several people spoke at once. No, he did. That's a lie. Your body cam will prove it. You shot that dog for nothing. The pressure of the witnesses, voices flattened whatever narrative Reynolds had clung to. Leonard stepped toward him slowly. "Your body camera," he said calmly, "turn it over." Reynolds hesitated, but the IA officer beside him extended a hand. "Now," the IA agent said. Reynolds unclipped the cam and handed it over, jaw shaking. No officer wants to be in that position. No officer expects to be. Leonard looked him in the eyes. "Whatever you thought happened," he said slowly, "the footage will show the truth. There's no hiding from that." Reynolds looked away, face pale, breathing uneven. Jordan watched from the SUV, his father's steady presence offering strength Jordan didn't feel yet. Leonard walked back to him, voice gentler. "They're taking Shadow now. Follow them. Stay with him at the facility. I'll join you after the scene is secured." Jordan blinked. "Dad, you're staying here." Leonard nodded. "This is where the truth begins, and I'm not leaving until every piece is in place." Jordan hesitated, then whispered the words he rarely said. "I need you." Leonard leaned in, speaking softly, firmly. "You have me, always, but you also have Shadow, and he needs you now. Go with him. I'll finish what was started here." Jordan exhaled shakily, then nodded. The SUV's engine started. Lights flashed. Shadow was on his way. Jordan watched through the window as his father turned his attention back to the officer who tried to rewrite the morning with a bullet. The turning point had begun. And truth, undeniable, unshakable truth, was finally taking center stage. The federal SUV carrying Shadow sped out of the park, escorted by another unmarked vehicle. Jordan watched it disappear onto the main road, his heart sinking and lifting all at once, sinking from fear, lifting from hope. As long as there was breath in Shadow's chest, there was something worth fighting for. Now the park felt colder, quieter, but not empty. Something had changed in the air, a shift from shock to scrutiny. Every witness, every officer, every bystander understood that whatever narrative had existed before was gone. And in its place stood a father who had no intention of letting lies survive another minute. Leonard stepped forward, commanding the scene without raising his voice. His presence alone redirected attention away from the stunned officer and toward the truth. "Before anything is processed," Leonard said to the IA agents, "we gather every angle, every witness, every timestamp." The younger IA agent nodded rapidly. "Sir, we have 7 videos already. People willingly handed them over. Some caught the entire altercation." Leonard nodded once. "Good, secure them, catalog each perspective separately, and back up everything to the federal channel." He turned to the crowd, scanning faces one by one, not with suspicion, but with gratitude. "I appreciate every one of you who recorded," he said. "Your footage may save my son's companion, and it will reveal exactly what happened." The older chess player stepped forward again. "Agent Miles, you need me to swear on anything? I'll do it." That officer walked up on that boy like he already made up his mind. Leonard's expression softened. "Thank you, your statement will be taken officially." Another jogger, the woman who'd knelt beside Jordan earlier, raised her hand. "My camera caught the moment he pulled the trigger. I'm still shaking, but I want you to have it." Leonard nodded deeply. "You're doing the right thing." Behind them, Reynolds sat on a bench under the supervision of 2 younger officers. His hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles looked bloodless. He stared at the ground, jaw trembling. Each passing second crushed him a little more under the weight of what he'd done. He finally muttered, barely audible, "This is being blown out of proportion." The younger officer beside him snapped, "Sir, don't, not now." Reynolds swallowed, eyes darting nervously as the IA team approached him with the body cam device. "Officer Reynolds," the IA officer with glasses said, "your body cam footage is now federal evidence. Under Title 18, tampering or withholding will result in immediate arrest." Reynolds' voice cracked. "I didn't tamper, it's on." Leonard didn't speak, he simply watched. He didn't need threats, His silence was a spotlight. The IA agent downloaded the footage on site, connecting the device to a secure tablet. Everyone could feel the tension rising with every second of loading progress. 10%, 28%, 52%, 71%, 93%, 100%. The agent glanced at the screen, then at Leonard. "Sir, the footage is clear." Reynolds stiffened. "Clear about what?" Leonard didn't move. "Play it." The IA agent turned the screen toward him, pressing the file open. The park fell into a deeper silence as the first seconds rolled. Reynolds approaching. Shadow calm beside Jordan. No barking. No lunging. No aggression. Just a loyal dog placing himself between Jordan and the officer's sudden movements. And then, Reynolds yelling, "Control your dog." Jordan holding the leash firmly. Shadow stepping back. Reynolds drawing his weapon. Jordan shouting, "He's not aggressive." Reynolds firing a split second later. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the speakers. Even though they'd lived it moments earlier, hearing it again made the crowd flinch. The air tightened. Witnesses shook their heads. One woman started crying. Reynolds' face went ashen. Leonard finally spoke, voice a low rumble. "Officer Reynolds, this footage shows no threat to you." Reynolds stammered, He stepped toward me." "He stepped toward his owner," Leonard corrected calmly. "He was aligning himself with Jordan. That is not aggression, that is instinct." Reynolds' voice rose in desperation, but his stance, his size, he looked like he could charge. Leonard's eyes narrowed slightly. Fear is not an excuse for poor judgment, and assumptions are not justification for taking a life, animal or human. Reynolds' breathing became shallow, frantic. I thought. "That's the problem," Leonard said quietly. "You thought instead of assessed. You reacted instead of read the situation. And my son's dog paid for your inability to control your own fear." Reynolds tried to stand, but the young officers gently guided him back down. One of them said under his breath, "Just sit, sir." The IA agent looked at Leonard. "We'll take him in for questioning, Agent Miles. We'll run a full review of his prior incidents, his training, his use of force history." Leonard nodded. "Good. And I'll be filing federal charges for animal cruelty, reckless discharge, and endangerment of a minor." Reynolds' eyes widened. "Federal charges for a dog? That's insane." Leonard stepped closer, voice lower than ever. "You shot my son's companion point blank. You traumatized a minor. You escalated a peaceful situation into gunfire, and you tried to lie your way through it." His voice dropped further. "This is no longer a dog case." Reynolds froze. "This is a misconduct case," Leonard said, "and you're walking straight into it." A long exhale slipped from someone in the crowd. People looked at each other with quiet vindication, not joy, not gloating, just relief that someone was finally being held accountable in a way they'd seen go wrong too many times. Jordan watched through the SUV window, tears still clinging to his lashes. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't relieved yet, but seeing the truth acknowledged, hearing the crowd's vocal support, meant something. It meant everything. Agents gathered more statements, witnesses lined up, officers secured the area, and all the while, Leonard stood as still as a mountain, keeping his focus sharp and his voice steady. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of processing, the IA officer approached Leonard again. "Sir, should we transport him now?" Leonard studied Reynolds for a moment, a man who had walked into this park with unearned confidence and was now crumbling under the weight of his own decisions. "Yes," Leonard said, "take him in." Reynolds stood, shoulders caving inward, and allowed himself to be escorted. Not in handcuffs, not yet. But everyone could feel the inevitability. The crowd watched in silence. As Reynolds was guided toward the patrol car, he turned once more toward Leonard. "You think you're better than me," the officer spat quietly. Leonard's expression didn't change. "This was never about being better," he said. "It was about being responsible." Reynolds looked away, defeated. The IA officers escorted him into the vehicle. The door shut with a heavy thud. The moment it did, a subtle shift rippled across the park, the feeling of truth settling into place. Leonard took a slow breath and finally walked back to the SUV where Jordan waited. He opened the door gently and sat beside him. Jordan whispered, "What happens now?" Leonard looked at him with eyes full of steady truth. "Now," he placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Now justice begins. Justice doesn't always come like thunder. Sometimes it travels quietly through whispers, screens, and minds until it becomes too loud for anyone to ignore." By the time the federal SUVs cleared the park, Roosevelt Avenue had transformed. What began as an ordinary morning walk now lived in hundreds of phones, thousands of hearts, and more eyes than Officer Reynolds could have imagined. Word spread fast, not because people loved drama, but because they recognized injustice when they saw it. And injustice hits different when it's caught on camera. As Leonard guided Jordan into a second SUV, the one heading to the K-9 trauma facility, people parted respectfully. Some touched Jordan's shoulder softly. Others offered quiet, genuine, "We're with you," or "I'm praying for your dog." Jordan could barely lift his head in response. Grief had hollowed him out, but he felt their presence, their witness, their weight, and in a way he hadn't expected, it made him feel a little less alone. Before closing the SUV door, Leonard pressed a hand to his son's cheek. "I'll be right behind you. Focus on Shadow. Let me handle the rest." Jordan nodded, though his voice was too unsteady to answer aloud. The door closed, separating father and son for now, but only physically. Leonard watched the SUV pull away, his jaw tightening, not with anger, but with resolve sharpened by years of seeing systems fail people who looked like him and his boy. "Not today. Not this time." He turned back toward the remaining officers and IA agents as the crowd slowly dispersed. The atmosphere was quieter now, not the tense quiet from earlier, but the sober stillness that follows truth unveiled. Sergeant Torres approached with a tablet in hand. "Agent Miles, we pulled dispatch logs for Reynolds from last night through this morning." Leonard accepted the device, scrolling through the entries with trained precision. He paused. He received no calls, leading him to the park. "Correct," Torres replied. He wasn't responding to anything, he just patrolled there on his own. Leonard looked up. He deviated from his assigned area. "Yes, sir." "That's another breach." "Yes, sir." Torres hesitated, then added, "Agent Miles, I've seen a lot of bad calls in my career, but what he did, there was no cause, none." Her voice held emotion she wasn't used to revealing in uniform. Leonard nodded solemnly. "Thank you for saying that." He knew sincerity when he heard it. The IA officer with glasses walked over next, holding the downloaded footage. "Agent Miles, we've isolated the key frames. We'll run a forensic review, but everything appears unaltered. It's clear-cut." Leonard inhaled slowly, exhaling with the weight of a man who had to keep himself from reacting too soon. "Prepare a summary for the precinct commander," he said. "I want a report in the system immediately." "Yes, sir." Leonard scanned the park one last time, the damp grass, the chalk outline marking where Shadow fell, the empty chess table, the stunned faces still lingering at a distance. A place once filled with routine and quiet joy now held the imprint of something far heavier. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number, federal line. He answered instantly. "Agent Miles." A firm voice responded. "Sir, This is Dr. Herrera at the K9 trauma facility. Your son and the shepherd have arrived. Leonard's heart hammered, not outwardly, but in a way only a father could feel. How is he? Leonard asked. We've stabilized him for now. The bullet missed his spine by less than an inch. He lost significant blood, but your son's pressure on the wound made a difference. He's not out of the woods yet, but his chances are markedly better than expected. Leonard closed his eyes briefly, a whisper of relief slipping through his guarded expression. Thank you, Doctor. I'm on my way. He ended the call and immediately signaled to Tors. Sergeant, I'll be reviewing this case remotely. Keep the area locked until the forensic team arrives. All officers involved in handling Reynolds are to file individual statements by end of day. Yes, sir. And Tors. Yes, sir. Leonard lowered his voice slightly. Thank you for doing your job with clarity. Tors nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. And thank you for holding him accountable. Leonard walked toward his vehicle, each step filled with the controlled force of a man who'd lived a lifetime navigating between justice on paper and justice in practice. The moment he sat inside his SUV, another notification flashed across his phone. Video uploaded, dog shot by police without cause, witness footage. Already over 8,000 views. Then 12,000. Then 19,000. The public conversation had begun. Comments scrolled beneath the thumbnail, outraged, heartbroken, demanding answers. Leonard didn't care about virality, but he knew the impact of pressure. He knew public truth sometimes moved institutions faster than internal memos. Especially when the story involved a teenager whose grief could silence entire crowds. And a dog who'd done nothing wrong. Leonard took a slow breath, focusing himself. He wasn't thinking about the comments. He wasn't thinking about the noise. He was thinking of Jordan, sitting beside Shadow's stretcher, praying for loyalty to survive one more night. He started the engine. As he pulled away from the park, a young woman, one of the earlier witnesses, stepped into the street, waving him down gently. Leonard lowered the window. Sir, she said, holding up her phone, I uploaded the video. The world's already watching. People are angry for your son, for that dog. We're with you. Leonard looked at her, truly looked, and saw sincerity, conviction, shared humanity. Thank you, he said quietly. You're a good father, she said softly. He didn't respond to that. He couldn't, not now, but his eyes softened with gratitude before he drove away. The road ahead felt heavier with each passing second. Not because he feared what would come, but because justice, real justice, isn't swift. It's slow, methodical, demanding. And today, it had already begun its march. Leonard accelerated toward the trauma center, the weight of the morning sitting beside him like an unwelcome passenger. Behind him, the park grew smaller in the rearview mirror. But the reckoning that started there, that was only getting louder. The K9 Trauma Center sat tucked behind a line of sterile medical buildings, its exterior quiet but purposeful, a place built not for spectacle, but for saving lives that rarely drew headlines. As Leonard pulled into the lot, the late morning sun barely reached him. It felt dimmer, distant, as though even the sky understood what kind of day this had been. Inside, the air carried a mix of antiseptic and faint dog shampoo, a blend that hit Leonard straight in the chest. He'd been in 1,000 hospitals in his career, human and K9 alike. But today, it wasn't another agent's partner. It wasn't another officer's dog. It was his son's heart, lying on an operating table. When Leonard stepped through the sliding doors, the receptionist looked up instantly. Agent Miles, she asked quietly. Yes, sir. Your son is in room 3. The shepherd is still in surgery. Leonard nodded once, steady but tight, and walked down the hall. He didn't have to push the door open fully to feel the weight in it. Jordan sat inside with both hands clasped, knuckles white, elbows on his knees. His head hung low, but not in defeat, in prayer, something he rarely did out loud, but grief has a way of making every soul reach upward. Leonard closed the door gently behind him. At the soft click, Jordan looked up. His eyes were swollen red, lashes still wet, but there was a flicker in them, relief, exhaustion, and a quiet plea for reassurance. "Dad," they said, "he's still alive." Leonard crossed the room and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "He's fighting," he said, "just like he always has." Jordan's breath trembled as he nodded. I keep replaying it, Dad, over and over. He didn't do anything. He didn't even bark. He didn't." "You don't have to explain," Leonard cut in softly. "I was there. I saw everything." Jordan swallowed hard. But why him? Why Shadow? Why did that man even? Leonard paused. The truth was painful, heavy, and deeply familiar, but he kneeled in front of his son, eye level, steady as stone. "Some people abuse power because they think no one's watching," Leonard said. "Some because they think certain people won't fight back, and some because they've been allowed to for too long." Jordan's jaw clenched, hurt folding slowly into confusion. And what happens now? Is he just suspended, put on leave, paid vacation while Shadow might? He couldn't finish. Leonard placed a firm hand on Jordan's knee. "Listen to me, this is not going away quietly, not today, not ever." Jordan blinked. "Because you're FBI." "No," Leonard said. His voice deepened, not with anger but conviction, "because the truth is louder than any badge." Jordan looked away, breathing unevenly. A knock broke the quiet. A doctor, small-framed but confident, stepped in with a surgical cap tucked under her arm, Dr. Herrera. She offered a sympathetic smile. "Agent Miles, Jordan." Jordan shot to his feet, breath catching. Is Shadow?" Dr. Herrera lifted a hand gently. "He's alive. He made it through the first phase of surgery." Jordan sagged back into his chair, head dropping into his hands as he exhaled shakily. Leonard closed his eyes, a quiet wave of relief passing through him. "But," she continued carefully, "the next 24 hours are critical. There was internal bleeding and a risk of infection. He's stable, but fragile." "Can we see him?" Jordan asked immediately. "You can, but only one at a time," Herrera said. "He'll be under sedation for a while, but hearing familiar voices can help." Jordan didn't even hesitate. "I'll go." Herrera nodded and led him down the hall. Leonard stayed behind for a moment, letting the quiet settle. Because as much as the father in him wanted to collapse, the agent in him had responsibilities that couldn't wait for grief to settle. He stepped out into the hall and dialed a number he'd avoided for years, not out of fear, but because when this contact got involved, things escalated quickly. A voice answered. "Miles." Leonard didn't waste breath. "Send the audit file, everything you have on Reynolds, complaints, reports, behavioral flags. I want it in my inbox within the hour." A pause, then, "Understood." "And send a copy to Internal Affairs, directly, don't wait for the chain of command. That'll cause waves." "Good," Leonard said, his voice low. "It's time someone stopped pretending not to see the pattern." He hung up. As he turned, the hallway television, always tuned to local news, flashed with a breaking headline. "Viral video raises questions about police conduct in Roosevelt Park." Leonard froze. They were already covering it. The screen showed blurred footage of the shooting, followed by witness commentary. Each clip carried the same vibration: shock, disbelief, sadness. Then came the interviews. A woman, "That boy didn't do anything. The dog didn't do anything." A jogger, "He shot too fast, like he wanted to." A man in work clothes, "If that officer keeps his job after this, something's wrong with the whole system." Leonard exhaled slowly. A nurse walking past looked at the screen and whispered, "About time they aired something real." The reckoning was spreading, not through rage, but through clarity. People had seen enough. This wasn't just a moment. It was a mirror. And now the whole city, had to look into it. Before long, Leonard's phone buzzed again, this time with messages, dozens of them, pouring in one after another. Colleagues, commanders, journalists. People he barely knew. People he'd never met. All sending the same underlying message, we saw it, this is serious. Leonard walked toward the visitation window where Jordan stood on the other side of the glass, gently touching it as Shadow lay motionless on the table. The boy's shoulders trembled, but beneath the grief there was something else forming, something steady. Resolve. Leonard stood quietly beside him. What happens next? Jordan whispered. Leonard's gaze stayed fixed on Shadow, breathing shallow but alive. Next, he said softly, the truth keeps moving. Jordan looked up at him. And after that? Leonard finally turned to him, eyes calm but fierce. After that, justice follows. Night fell like a slow curtain, dark, quiet and heavier than usual. Inside the observation room of the K9 Trauma Center, the overhead lights dimmed into a soft blue hue. Machines hummed in steady rhythms. Shadow slept under sedation, chest rising and falling weakly, but with stubborn determination. Jordan sat beside him, one hand resting gently near the shepherd's paw. He'd barely moved in hours. His hoodie was smeared with dried blood, his eyes red from crying, but something inside him had shifted from raw grief to a calm, quiet strength. A strength he didn't expect. A strength he inherited. The door opened softly. Leonard stepped inside, carrying a cup of warm water and a blanket. His tie was loosened. His shoulders still squared, but visibly tired, the day weighing on him in ways only another father could understand. You should rest, Leonard said gently, placing the blanket beside Jordan. Jordan shook his head, not until he wakes up. Leonard pulled up a chair and sat beside him. For a long stretch of time, neither spoke. They simply breathed the same air, a father and a son, united by loss, love, and something deeper. Truth. It sat between them like a third presence in the room. After a while, Jordan whispered, Dad, did he get arrested? Leonard exhaled slowly. Internal Affairs has him under detention. They found reports he never filed, incidents he covered up, patterns he thought no one noticed. Jordan's jaw clenched. People like that shouldn't have badges. No, Leonard agreed softly, they shouldn't. Silence hung for several seconds, but not the painful kind, the reflective kind. The kind that allows truth to settle instead of sink. Jordan finally spoke again, voice small. I keep thinking, if I yelled sooner, if I stepped in front of Shadow, if I... Leonard turned sharply, gently gripping his son's forearm. Stop, he said firmly. You don't carry that weight, you never did. Jordan's eyes shimmered. Leonard's voice softened. The only person responsible is the man who pulled the trigger. Jordan nodded, swallowing emotion. Leonard leaned back in his chair, staring at the sleeping dog. You know, when I joined the bureau, I thought justice was something clear, something written down, something you could point to. He paused. But the older I got, the more I saw justice isn't written on paper. It's written in how we treat each other, in who we choose to stand up for. Jordan listened closely. Today, Leonard continued, you stood up for Shadow, you stayed, you held him, you protected him when he needed you most. But I couldn't stop it, Jordan whispered. Leonard shook his head. Son, you showed strength most grown men don't have, and you did it without anger, without violence. You led with your heart. Jordan wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. Leonard's eyes softened even more. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the truth that survives after the noise fades, and the truth is already spreading. People saw what happened. They know what's right. Jordan stared at Shadow's slow breathing. I just want him to be okay. He's fighting, Leonard said, because he knows you're here. The room held its breath for a moment, the machines beeping softly, the air conditioning humming quietly. Then Jordan whispered, Dad, Why do people like Reynolds even get to do what they did? Why didn't anyone stop him before today? Leonard sighed, a deep, tired sigh that carried years of experience, frustration, and wisdom. Because some people mistake power for permission, he said. They think authority means they're above accountability. They think silence protects them. They think no one will question their story. He paused. But today proved something important. Jordan looked up. Truth doesn't need permission, Leonard said quietly, and silence doesn't protect injustice, it exposes it. Jordan didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His father's words settled deep inside him, weaving themselves into the fabric of who he would become. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time felt different in that room. Then a tiny sound broke the stillness. A whine. Soft, weak, but unmistakably Shadow. Jordan shot up, leaning closer. Shadow, buddy. The shepherd's ear twitched slightly. His breath stayed shallow, but when Jordan called his name again, the dog's eyelids fluttered, opening just enough to see a familiar face through the haze of sedatives. Jordan's voice cracked. Hey, I'm here, I'm right here. Shadow tried to lift his head, but Jordan gently placed a hand on his shoulder. No, don't move, just rest, okay. Leonard watched silently, a slow smile breaking through the fatigue. The kind of smile a father wears when he sees his child rediscover hope. Shadow let out another soft whine, not of pain this time, but recognition. He was still fighting. Jordan brushed the dog's head gently, whispering, "Good boy, that's my good boy." Leonard placed a steady hand on his son's back. "You see," he said softly, "some battles aren't won by loud voices. They're won by staying, by fighting, by standing tall." Jordan nodded, tears of relief slipping down his cheeks. "Dad, what if people forget? What if it all fades away?" Leonard looked at him with calm, quiet certainty. "They won't forget," he said, "and neither will you. This moment will stay with you, not as a wound, but as a reminder." He paused. A reminder that dignity isn't loud, strength isn't loud, truth isn't loud. His hand tightened gently on Jordan's shoulder. "You can win battles without raising your voice." Jordan wiped his tears and whispered, "Yeah, I guess you really can." Leonard smiled softly. "And if you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or made to feel small," he added, speaking not just to Jordan, but to anyone who'd ever felt unseen, "this story is yours too." He stood slowly, resting one last hand on Shadow's side. "If you believe in quiet strength," Leonard whispered, "hold on to that." The room settled again, still heavy, still fragile, but filled now with something brighter. Shadow breathing. Jordan healing. Truth standing tall. A lesson learned without shouting. A battle won without rage. Justice carried out in silence. And in the quiet glow of hospital lights, father and son sat together, letting strength speak for itself.